All right, welcome to my lecture about parallel structure and the importance of parallel structure in your writing. As always, I'm going to start with a screen share. And we're going to pull this up nice and big. So parallel structure or parallel construction, what is it? How can it help your writing? And what are some of the most important things to remember about parallel construction / parallel structure? So parallel structure is essentially a repetition of a chosen grammar form within a sentence or piece of writing. Don't worry, I'm going to cover this as we go. There are numerous benefits to parallelism. You get more clarity, balance, rhythm, comparability, concision, and memorability in your writing. By the way, this slide is a perfect example of parallel structure. So clarity, it's easier for your audience to understand your writing, and it's key for speeches where the audience cannot reread your text because it makes it more memorable. With the balance, parallelism has this tendency to roll off the tongue, and it gives a feeling of satisfaction for your reader or your listener. Rhythm, when you have 3 or more parallel patterns that are often used to establish a powerful rhythmic beat. Think of music and where you've got some of these key catchphrases and there's a parallel structure that happens with them, and they really stick and they really resonate with you because of this parallel structure. Comparability, so there are a lot of similarities and differences of 2 items, and it's often emphasized when you are able to use parallel structure. Don't worry, I'm going to have samples of all of these to help you see them in action. Concision. So when you rephrase your writing using parallel structure, it actually makes for more concise language. The memorability. Parallel structure makes aspects of a speech more memorable. And when you do this, when you're able to have something stand out in your message with that parallel structure, it leaves your audience thinking as they walk away, and not just in speeches, but also with your writing. They may not remember the exact phrasing, but they're going to remember the message, and that's the important part. Well, how do you use it? You use it to emphasize a comparison or a contrast. You use it for lists of words and phrases. You use it to end parallel words and phrases with the same letter combinations. And you can combine parallelism with the power of 3. There's actually something very powerful about the number 3 that sticks in the human brain. When you have 2, sometimes that parallel structure isn't as obvious as when you have 3. And 3 is something that we can remember as opposed to 4 or 5, where one of those items ends up dropping off. You can use parallelism on your slides and handouts. Again, that first one where I said this is a prime example of parallelism, where all of them are the same part of speech and they're exactly one word, that's parallelism. And you can absolutely use that to help things stick out more in your audience. If you go back and you rewatch this, you'll also notice that when I actually hit on these topics, I did them in the same order that they're presented on that first slide. So that's another type of parallelism for handouts and presentations. And then if you're doing a speech, you do want to pause and have vocal variety to mark your parallel structure. And this is because your audience cannot hear your punctuation. And so your voice becomes your punctuation. Let's look at some samples. So for the comparison and the contrast, here are 3 prime examples. The first one, that's 1 small step for man, 1 giant leap for mankind. If you look at the construct of these compare-contrast sentences, we have 1 small versus 1 giant. We have step versus leap. We have for man versus mankind. So here they used an exact sentence construct, and they just changed a couple of words. This quote is so memorable that it has been around for decades. It was the first man on the moon, which happened in the 60s, 1960s. So take that into consideration when you are creating parallelism. It does have a powerful effect, and it can be one that sticks around. Next, exercise is bunk. If you are healthy, you don't need it. If you are sick, you shouldn't take it. So here we have if you. You see that? That semicolon splits up the two areas that are being compared. So we have an if you setup. We have healthy versus sick. So there's our contrast. And then we have our you and you, don't need it versus shouldn't take it. So we have the exact same construct. If you are. And then you, verb, followed by another verb, followed by it. You, verb. So you see how it's the exact same sentence construct. The parts of speech are all the same. We just change a few little things, which make it stand out more. Finally, one of my favorites. My social policies hold families together. Your policies rip families apart. Again, we have that same sentence setup that creates this, this extreme contrast. And this is a tool that is often used by politicians. And I don't care what end of the spectrum you're on. I don't care what political affiliations you have. This is used by politicians across the board. So if you think about it, if you're sitting in the audience and you're listening to this sentence specifically, my policies hold families together. Your policies rip families apart. Which politician are you going to side with? If you are very heavy on keeping families together. If family's not as important to you, maybe that's a sentence you skip over, but just that construct. We have my versus your, social policies versus policies, hold, so there's our verb, versus rip. There's our verb. Families is the same, versus together and apart. So again, the exact same parts of speech in the exact same order, with just a couple of little changes to have that contrast. Next, we have lists of words and phrases. So in anticipation of the visit, the homeowner cut the grass, trimmed the hedge, painted the fence, and cleared the path. Did you hear a pattern? Did you hear a rhythm? Did you hear the beat? And it sticks with you. Again, we have that construct. These are phrases instead of sentences like we were dealing with before, but we have verb, the noun, verb, the noun, verb, the noun, verb, the noun, and it creates this pattern that sticks with you. And it's very concise and very succinct. It's very exact for that writing. The next sample, you do want to have parallel words and phrases with the same letter combinations because it's easier on your reader or your audience. The scientist hypothesized wisely, measured precisely, calculated exactly, and reported succinctly. It's very exact. And so having that exact creates this rhythm that your reader can get into. And it makes it more memorable. You do want to combine parallelism with the power of 3. Again, while you only need 2 elements to create parallel structures, as you saw in that first sample with the sentences, because we only have the 2 sentences for each one that were being compared, there's actually something magical about the third parallel element when you have phrases. So having that third magical element, it does stick out just a little bit more. Use parallelism on your slides and your handouts. Just as it benefits your spoken word, it benefits your printed word. You want to check any bulleted lists that you make and make sure that they are they are put in parallelism correctly so that your reader has an easier time. And again, You do want to pause if you're doing a presentation. You want to pause to mark your parallel structures. Using pauses in vocal variety helps to convey the start and the end of parallel patterns. Your audience can't actually see your commas or any other punctuation to know where the parallel structures are divided. So you do have to convey them vocally. If you're in one of my classes, I have a hyperlink for you that shows this in political speeches. So just lots of samples here. You can pause this video for each one and see if you can figure out what the parallelism is. And maybe you even want to see if you can figure out what the parts of speech are that are being used in that parallel pattern. So you can pause the video here. 2 more samples of where you can pause the video. 2 more samples where you can pause the video. And then this is for my in-person class, or if you are in one of my online classes, I actually have this link available for you so you can see parallelism at work in public speeches, and you can actually hear how that sounds. After you've done this entire lecture and hopefully taken a look at this hyperlink, and I am hovering over that for you so that if you're not in my class and you do want to see that, you still have the website. You can pause the video, write that down, and go to that website. I'd like to see you figure out how you can use parallel structure to enhance your own writing. And if you've gotten to the point where we've had our lecture about the thesis statement, this is definitely one of those areas where you can use parallel structure. And I would like you to apply this lecture to what you've learned about the thesis statement. All right, I hope you found this video useful and that you are able to apply this in your writing. If you're using this in fiction, you can absolutely use it for, multiple actions with characters. Definitely go back as many times as you need, watch this as many times as you need, and apply this in your writing, because parallelism in writing is so powerful, as well as speeches. So if you're doing a speech and you're needing that extra oomph, definitely use parallel structure. It will help. Thanks so much.